starting live video. You're live.
Okay, hey, this is Dale Carson, attorney, Jacksonville, Florida. Just a live broadcast about something that should be obvious to everyone, but apparently is not. Lately here in Jacksonville, we've seen videotapes of people hurting turtles. We've seen videotapes of people stealing from stores, a lot of it live broadcast. And I encourage you to not behave that way. I mean, I am convinced that young men, particularly young men, are not very bright when it comes to behaving and experimenting, doing things that they perhaps shouldn't do, setting things on fire, stealing things out of stores. I mean, it may be true that young boys do things like that, and it certainly was when I was growing up. Young boys did stuff like that, but we had an advantage. We didn't film it and memorialize it in some way, thinking that it would be super cool to have it on video so we could show our friends. And though that makes perfect sense in an odd way, to be able to show your friends how rough and tough you are and how you're willing to take things to the very edge by jumping off of a bridge or a car, you know, the bottom line is that when you memorialize it and you keep it online, it's going to end up causing you trouble in two specific ways. One, if you are a convicted felon or you're underage or you're a prohibited person for owning a firearm and you show an actual firearm on video, you're going to get jammed up. Or if you're counting money off copious amounts of currency, even though you don't have a job, all of that attracts the interest of people who would be delighted to put you in jail. And so taking out your camera while you're engaging in stupid behavior just is not a smart thing to do. And it's even worked its way over into young women who were recently caught or injuring a protected species turtle and filming it and having that film be disclosed to the Freshwater Game Commission people, who then located the individuals and arrested them. So look, if you're going to behave badly, which I don't recommend, but if you are, certainly don't memorialize it and put it on tape, because not only will that may result in a crime that you're charged with, it also will reflect on your behavior 20 years from now when somebody pulls that up and shows that you are a bad person or you're immoral. Those are things that you don't want to have made a permanent record in the internet. And as we all know today, everything that's on the internet is permanent. It hides somewhere. In the state of Florida, we have what's known as the Sunshine Law. So everybody who's arrested, their photograph, if they're an adult, is displayed at the sheriff's office. And so once that is absorbed by companies that store that sort of information, then they'll write you and say, hey, Bob, would you like to have your arrest picture not broadcasted on our webpage? And of course, you see it and you're frightened and you ask them not to do it, but they want some money to do that. So look, the key here is not that the government photographs you and dispenses that information. The key here is that if you do things that are boy things, young girl things to do, don't memorialize it with a camera unless you want it used as evidence against you in a court of law, and it's evidence that is almost irrefutable. Now, it's true today, particularly with audio files, people can be made to say almost anything you can imagine based on what we now know is a 40-minute trail of their conversation. They believe that in 40 minutes, you say enough words that you can be then caused to say anything a computer can generate. And it's become something of a frightening prospect. There's an interesting YouTube video or a video on a podcast that talks specifically about this, and we will link to that when we're through this conversation. So don't believe me. You can listen to the podcast and be scared, just like I am, that anything you say online can be twisted around by an opponent or an enemy or someone who means you harm to say anything that would compromise who you are as an individual. It may ultimately get to the point that the only time you can trust what somebody's actually saying is when they're sitting in front of you saying it, not remotely recorded. But again, the important thing that I want to talk with you and warn you about today is not to memorialize, use one of these bad boys to film something that's going to come back to injure you in the future, not only personally and professionally, but also criminally, because they're happy to charge people with cases that are just made in heaven for law enforcement. If you have questions or concerns or ideas about topics that you want addressed, don't hesitate to reach out to us at www.dalecarsonlaw.com or simply give us a call, give us a note on Facebook, because we're happy to try to educate you about our perspective about what the law is doing to put you in jail on a day-to-day basis and how to avoid that from happening to you or a loved one. Thanks for watching.